If you could put yourself back in time 30 years, what would you feel? What would the world be like? Why did I start the video this way? Well, I don't know, but either way, 30 years ago was when Microsoft Windows 95 was released to the world. What some would argue the first time Microsoft ever took OS development seriously, and what some would argue the last time Microsoft took OS development seriously. Windows 95 was introduced to manufacturing in middle of July 1995, and released to the general public in August. And what we're going to do in this video is go over two computers and install Windows 95 on them, and maybe reminisce a little bit at times gone by, because boy howdy have they ever changed since 1995. I mean, it was 30 years ago after all. But of course, we really need to have a little bit of a history lesson, because you can't really truly appreciate Windows 95 unless you understand the context in which it existed, the context in which it was brought up, and the legacy in which it bestowed upon people, and really what it did to the PC industry. So strap yourselves in. This is going to be one hell of a ride, because I was not around in 1995, and I certainly was not old enough to have been invested at all in Windows 95. In fact, I'm barely old enough to remember the Windows 98 release. I would have been 2 at the time Windows 98 was released. But I do still remember it, and I remember it being a big deal, and I remember it sucking, and I remember the blue screen of death during the one of the demos. You plug in this scanner and whoa. Anyway, this isn't about Windows 98, this is about Windows 95. There are countless Windows 95 30-year retrospectives out there that go into quite a bit more detail than this one will. But what I want to do really is I want to go ahead and install Windows 95 on some machines, go over some installation stuff, and just have a good old discussion about it, because I happen to prefer Windows 95 over Windows 98, which is the other contemporary, but we'll get into that here in just a bit. But first, the history lesson that I promised, that I'm sure I'll get wrong because, well, I wasn't around at the time. Let's go back to 1981. Or 1982. I don't remember when the IBM PC came out off the top of my head. We'll call it 1981 because I think that's when the PC came out. When the PC came out, and for quite a while afterwards, unless you were really highfalutin anyway, this is what you would have sat down to. Someone's probably going to point out right now that this computer is from 1987. You're letting the facts get in the way of the story here. We live in a post-fact world, don't you know? Anyway, the basic concept hasn't changed from the original PC in 1981 versus this Core Data CS40 from 1987, at least in its current configuration. This is what's called DOS prompt. It's just text. Programs were programs. What you'll notice about this system is that there's a keyboard, but there is no mouse. And that was common back in the day. The mouse was not a common peripheral, because for the most part there really wasn't anything to point at. You could install a mouse driver and point it at things on the text screen. Yes, you could do that. Later on there were things like DOS shell, and Microsoft did eventually come out with Windows in 1985, and subsequently iterated over it. which used a mouse. There were other graphical interfaces that used a mouse. But the common experience, and certainly the initial experience, was a text mode interface. No graphics, no anything else. Outside of ASCII art and games and things like that. Nothing to point at. There's no point and click interface here. But then 1984 happened, and Apple came out with a Macintosh. A machine which had no command line interface at all. Although it started sooner, this was the dawn of the mouse era. Oh, and here again, before the folks that love putting facts in front of the story point all this stuff out. Yes, this is a Macintosh Plus. This is not an original Macintosh 128 from 1984. This is from 1986 or 87? A little bit later. I don't own an original 1984 Macintosh, and I was not going to buy one just for this video. That would be frightfully expensive. The eagle-eyed, who remember my Macintosh Plus video, will probably be saying, well, doesn't your Macintosh Plus have a video problem? It does. This is not the same Macintosh Plus. But that is a future video and a future endeavor, because this unit has problems in and of itself, and so does the other one, because I have two of them. We're letting the facts get in the way of the story here. This is supposed to be about Windows 95. What does this have anything to do with Windows 95? Well, in order to get from this to Windows 95, we have to jump back to the PC, 1990, 1992, somewhere in there, which was Microsoft's first real popular operating system / graphical environment. And that was Windows 3.1. We can't run that on this. We got to move to something else. So let's go forward in history, away from 1981 and 1984, up to about 1992, and a little bit later, 93, but really it started in 1990. The early 1990s. Computers had metamorphosized into things like this. Which, again, for the sake of completeness on this video, because someone will ask, that is a 486 with VLB slots. I put that together on a video and never really went anywhere with it. Still haven't really gone anywhere with it. I think that was like 5 years ago. But I still have it, and it's right here. Does it work? Well, we're about to find out. Do you want some irony in this video? Well, I might be about to give you some irony in this video, because I don't know if the mouse is going to work, because obviously a computer like this predates PS2 ports being standard on a computer. So I have a 5-pin keyboard, and, which I hope it's not going to blow up, because that's a nice Model M, but, and I have a PS2 mouse hooked up with a serial adapter. I've never had that mouse work with a serial adapter. But we'll find out what happens, including whether or not the computer is going to explode. Well, it didn't explode, but it also didn't work. I think my video card might have died. That was an interesting noise. Oh, a piece of junk. There we go. It's half off the screen, but I gotta configure it. Kind of figured that was gonna happen. Windows 3.1, released in 1992, was the first Microsoft Windows operating system that really took off. Go figure, just no mouse. Well, forget it, we're not going to have a mouse because it wants to install media. I don't know where that is right now, so we're not going to do that. So take my word for it that there's things to point and look at here in Windows. Just as some examples here, just some stuff that you could run. You could do it entirely from the keyboard, it is possible. With Windows 3.1, you still had to install MS-DOS. You still had to run MS-DOS, and you still knew that you were running MS-DOS. You were still stuck with a lot of the limitations of MS-DOS. And in particular, you were stuck with the 640K RAM limit, cooperative multitasking, which meant that if one program hung, your entire system usually hung along with it, and a singular global event queue that when you took everything into account, what you ended up with really was a house that was made out of matches. Flimsy, and it might crash and burn at any moment. So how about Windows 95? Before we really get into Windows 95, it's important to understand the context in which Windows 95 exists and the radical differences that it bestowed upon the world as compared to traditional versions of Windows, like, for example, Windows 3.1, or, well, in this case, 3.11, but it's the same basic thing that came before it. See, you'll notice here the setup instructions. At the MS-DOS prompt, type A setup and press enter. And that's because you had to have MS-DOS installed on your machine already. And that was the way that Windows worked from its inception in 1985 with Windows 1.0 all the way up to Windows 3.11 or 3.2 if you happen to be in the Chinese-speaking portion of the world. Windows 95, on the other hand, was a standalone operating system. Now, it still depended on DOS. I think I mentioned earlier it was basically nothing more than Windows 4.0 on top of MS-DOS 7. But at the heart of it all, it was installable as its own product, either as an upgrade, if you bought the upgrade version for previous versions of Windows, or as a complete fresh install for PCs without Windows already, starting from scratch. You'll notice that this computer does not have a CD-ROM drive. Now, CD-ROM drives are starting to become a lot more commonplace. Weren't guaranteed, but Windows 95 basically came in three flavors at retail. Either a floppy or a CD-ROM, 3.5, or CD-ROM version, as an upgrade for PCs with Windows already on them, or as a full install with 3.5-inch floppies. It did not come as a full install on CD-ROM. That did not exist. Yes, CD-ROM versions for PCs without Windows did exist later on, but those were the OEM versions or the various OEM service releases, or OSR versions. OSR1, OSR2, 2.1, 2.5, so on and so forth. Obviously, this computer that we're going to use, at least to start with, has got no CD-ROM drive, so it doesn't make sense to use a CD version. So we are going to use the 13 floppy version of Windows 95, the full retail release, the original release of Windows 95, on 13 floppies. They are DMF floppies, well, except for the first disk and the boot disk. They are DMF. There is a version out there that's not DMF that has a lot more floppies in it. I have used that on this channel before. But for the case of this, we're going to use the original release For a PC without Windows, there is no operating system, there's no partition on the hard drive that is in this machine right now. So we're going to get this set up. Hopefully this is going to work. With 13 floppies plus a boot disk, in this day and age, you never know when you're going to run into a bad disk. And I've had a lot of problems with bad floppy disks over the last little while, but fingers crossed we can actually get through this. Like pretty much all of the rest of this video, this is not going to be a complete experience of Windows 95 as it was designed to be back in the day. But what I'm going for is how I experienced Windows 95 originally, my first experiences with it, which is to say, no sound, no real multimedia, no real anything. That was my first experience with Windows 95, and that is what I'm going to try and convey here in this video with both of the machines that we are going to use. Yes, I said both, because we are going to do an upgrade install as well, and just see what the differences happen to be. Alright, we are now ready to begin our installation of Windows 95 start to finish from floppy diskette, which I am now attempting for the second time because apparently the floppy drive that I put in here that I thought was good is not good, so I had to go find another one. We'll see if this one is good and if it works, or if we continue to have problems with floppy diskettes not functioning. Wouldn't be surprised if we do, because you know, this media is as old as it is, and I've had a lot of bad luck with floppy disks over the last little while. But keep your fingers crossed that this is actually going to function. Like I said, this is from start to finish. There's no partition on the hard drive, nothing, because I deleted it after making a first attempt at this. We'll see what happens. And hit the power. Yes, the computer has a bad fan. We're now making an attempt to boot from floppy. It is making some noise, and we are starting Windows 95. This is already way better than the first time I've tried this. For the sake of the bit, I'm not going to edit any of this. Well, I'll edit out any issues I have with floppy disks, but I'm not going to edit any of the actual installation process. So you can see we've just booted. We don't need DOS on the machine, we don't need anything. In fact, with this, because this is the retail full version, I think, I don't actually know, because the setup program is called OEM Setup, so now I've got some questions. But the fact of the matter is it's the full setup. We don't need DOS on here. It is just run it. So the setup program is preparing Windows 95 to run on the computer. Press enter to set up Windows now. Press F1 to learn more about setup. F3 to exit. We're going to press enter. This is just like DOS, configure unallocated disk space. Yes. And now it will reboot. And we'll see what happens. It is tempting to install a CD-ROM in here, but I would need more of the proprietary rails in order to do that, and guess what? Guess what you can't find these days? These systems. And also the proprietary rails. I guess you could probably 3D print something, but that's neither here nor there, and I don't know that there's a model, because I don't know that there's really a market for 3D printed drive rails and a Dell OmniPlex of any kind. So now we're formatting the C drive. We'll see how long that takes. One thing I'll mention that I kind of wonder about, that I wonder might be tainting this process, is I wonder if this system is in the slow CPU mode. Because the power LED is orange. The BIOS setup said that the CPU mode was fast, so I don't think so, but who knows. I tried the key combination, at least the standard key combination for it, and it didn't help. And there's, of course, no button. But that process took about 2 minutes. So insert disk 1, or the Windows CD-ROM, which we can't do because, well, there is no Windows CD-ROM. Of course, this floppy drive that I'm using now has no faceplate and no buttons, so that's convenient. So we'll take our disk 1, see if general failure starts to read my drive again. Now, so far so good, and that was also a lot faster than the other drive. So now it's going to do scan disk. Loading. This is the part where it failed last time. And I never got this message. It's setup initializing. I hope my mouse is plugged in. Never got to the point of copying files, so already we're doing better. And it's on the same diskette, so clearly that drive has got an issue. So I guess I'm replacing another floppy drive in this machine. Maybe. No, it's still going. Here we go, graphical portion of setup. Welcome to Windows 95 setup. Congratulations on your choice of Windows 95, the newest and easiest way to do what you want to do with your PC. Setup will take 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer. Well, it's about 8:55 right now. Let's see how long this process takes. To begin, press continue. I might have mentioned it or I might have edited it out, but this computer has no sound card. I also have no idea what video chipset it's using, other than to say that it's some ATI thing. I think it's a Mach 64, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Windows 95 will figure it out for me, but I do know there's no sound. And no multimedia capability of any kind. So this is not really the experience of Windows 95 that is a full experience of Windows 95, but it's the way that I experienced Windows 95 for the first time. Conveniently enough on a Dell. So we're just kind of reliving that experience. See how long this takes. Oop. Please insert disk 2. Alright, we will do that. Hopefully disk 2's good. Okay. So far, so good. I'm definitely nervous about bad diskettes with this. It's making a bad noise. I don't like that noise. Maybe it's fine. That's jumping right through. Alright, please read the following license agreement. Yes. Read that extraordinarily carefully. Like you're supposed to do. Welcome to the Windows 95 setup, which will guide you through the rest of setup. To begin, click Next. Collecting information about your computer. This is probably going to ask me for a product key, so I'm going to have to go find that. I just hit the Next button. We're going to install the C Windows, which is standard. It's going to check for installed components. It's not going to find any because the disk is blank, but it's still got to do it. If we were trying to upgrade or trying to install this on a system that already had Windows on it, this might actually fail and tell you that you have to use the upgrade version. So here we get the option. Click the kind of setup you prefer. Typical, portable, compact, or custom. I'm going to go for custom, and I'm going to install as much as I can. Now, it's important to keep in mind this has a 210 megabyte hard drive, so we can't run it out of space. Yep, wants a 10-digit key. Okay, put in my totally legal code, and now, analyzing your computer. It will detect the hardware devices in your computer. You can have setup look for all devices, or you can specify which devices you want setup to search for. Do you want it to look for all of them? Well, let's say yes, and see what it does. Okay, so what do we have? Well, I have a network adapter, so we'll go ahead and we'll check that. I do not have a CD-ROM, and I do not have a sound card. So we'll see if it will find my EISA Etherlink 3 that I happen to have in this machine. Listen to that hard drive thrash. Good old Western Digital caviar. This may take several minutes. If there's no disk activity for a long time, turn the computer off and turn it back on and choose Safe Recovery. That's always a fun process. The light on the Adaptec SCSI card that I have installed is also flashing while it is doing this process. So clearly it's doing something. Okay. Alright, folks, let's install all of this crap. I definitely want the Microsoft network, I want mail, and I want faxing. Even though I have none of this stuff to make it work, and it's not going to work 30 years later anyway. Install all the things. No, I don't want to do that. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to check them all manually. Install everything. Again, keep in mind that we only have 211 megabytes to work with. Communications. Yes, I'm on all this crap. Sure, install that too. Disk tools. I definitely want backup. I'll certainly use that. That's installed. That's installed. Multimedia. Well, there's no sound card in here, but I'm just going to install it all anyway. And the Microsoft network. You'll notice the conspicuous absence of anything having to do with Internet Explorer on here. This was one of the last versions of Windows to come without, i.e. bundled as a optional component. Alright. Next. It's about 58 megabytes. So we're using about... what is that? A quarter of the drive? Sounds good to me. Okay. Reading the hard drive. It did find the 3Com Etherlink 3. Look at that. I would like... oops, protocol. I would like TCP IP. Which, funny enough, it does not add by default. So we're going to go ahead and add it. Okay. Probably don't need anything on here. We're just going to do Windows logon. And we'll set this up. Okay. Hey, look at that. Mach 32. It found the video chipset. Standard everything else. Looks like standard, no advanced power management. That makes sense because there's no, this is an AT system. User interface. We can change this, and you can select the old program manager if you really wanted to, but you bought Windows 95 so you could have the nice new interface, right? So, I don't really care to have a startup disk. Now here we go. Here's the main part of setup. Copying files. This is the part where I expect we're going to run into all kinds of problems with diskettes. Let's see how long it takes. It's about 9:05 right now. See if we can zoom in a little bit on what this says. Not really. This is extremely exciting stuff. Aren't you happy I'm not editing it for you? Alright, disk 3. Don't fail me now. Most of this video is going to be extremely exciting. Listening to a bad power supply fan, occasional floppy disk noises you may or may not be able to hear, punctuated by my voice, talking about inane crap every once in a while. This is terrifically fun. Maybe I'll be a nice boy and I'll let you skip to the end of this. I'll let you know where the timestamp is to skip to the end of this. Nah, that'd be too easy, right? It's funny looking at all of these things that setup is talking about. All these things that we take for granted in this day and age. smoother multitasking. That was a big deal back then, though. I think I mentioned some of the pitfalls of things like Windows 3.1 and its global event queue earlier. It was a real problem. And of course, the new idea of 32-bit computing. Although it's a misnomer to call Windows 95 32-bit. Parts of it are, but not the whole thing. There's still a lot of 16-bit stuff in Windows 95. This is something that people used to do all the time back in the day. You know, I'd set this to music, but I don't think there's music that's long enough to go through this entire process. Not music that's royalty-free. Well, maybe that's not true. I'm sure I could look through YouTube's royalty-free music library and find something, but who wants to use any of that? I would love to have a set of speakers that look like the set of speakers in that picture. That would be neat. That would be very neat. I'm sure someone could 3D print that. Could even be me, who knows? Here's your reminder. There are 13 discs. So we're almost halfway there. Halfway there. Ah, plug and play. Back in the day, everybody called it plug and pray. It's a good thing that those days are over. Because boy, howdy did it ever suck. I mean, it worked on this system, though. But then again, this is an EISA system. The whole name of the game was plug and play. It better work. Oop, that doesn't sound good. I'm hearing scratching noises coming from the floppy drive. I'm sure my good luck is about to run out. Hope I don't have to go find another floppy drive. Well, I know I'm gonna have to find another floppy drive, but I don't want to keep going through all of them because one of them's got to work, right? It's too bad this one is the one that works because it has no faceplate, and I can't add a faceplate because I don't have the faceplate that it would need. That's taken. So that might not work. Can you imagine having to do this every time you got a virus on your computer back in the day? That, I think, to me, would have been incentive enough to get a CD-ROM drive. We are just about at the half-an-hour mark. So what we're looking at is the low end of the scale for how long Microsoft said that this process was going to take. We're just about there right now. I'm going to title this video, or at least part of the title of this video is going to be the Windows 95 experience. And it would not be the Windows 95 experience without experiencing the eternal load from a floppy drive. Which is part of the reason why later on in this video I'm going to grab a system with a CD-ROM drive and we'll compare it and see just how long it takes. I think you'll find the difference stunning. I know I certainly did. It's the only thing that made Windows 98 worthwhile. Everything else about 98 was absolute crap. There were two things. Number one was the WDM drivers for USB devices. And number two was the CD-ROM. Because I didn't get a CD-ROM copy of Windows 95 until much, much, much later. I had computers with the CD-ROM copy of Windows 95 on it. That was a long time ago. Of course, the way to get around this is what you do is you copy all the setup files to the hard drive so that it doesn't have to do this. Of course, I don't know that you can because the way that the disks are set up. I think that's primarily for the CD-ROM version, just to speed it up even more. But there's a time and a place for speeding things up, and when you're trying to get an experience and get an idea for how something was once upon a time, speeding things up is not the way to go. You've got to experience it the way it was meant to be, or the way that it was back when it was new. 30 years ago, in the case of Windows 95, as of the making of this video right now. Or at least as of August of the year that this video is being made in. The Microsoft Network. You ever wondered where MSN came from and what it stands for? Now you know. Bulletin boards and the internet. Anybody remember BBSs? I certainly remember BBSs. Again, it's a different time. Disk 10. Oh, come on, eject. Don't do this to me. We're getting there. Here's another thing that you would have had to worry about back in the day. Can you imagine? You get to disk 13 and the power goes out? That'd be fun. People with YouTube channels that are worth watching would edit all of this out of the video. I guess I don't have to worry about that because I don't have a YouTube channel worth watching. But I repeat myself when I say that there is something to be said for getting the full experience. And if this is the way that you get the full experience, this is the way that you get the full experience. Disk. I wonder what Microsoft would do if I were to try and register Windows 95 right now. I wouldn't be surprised if I looked it up to find a news story talking about people doing just that around the date of Windows 95's 30th birthday. Just because that would be something that the collective internet would do. No Windows tour for us plebs using the floppy version. Like I said earlier on in the video, Windows 95 really was the first time that Microsoft took operating system research and development seriously. And the argument could be made that it was the last time that they did so, because subsequent versions of Windows just threw it all away in favor of integrating Internet Explorer into everything. And if you think I got a little bit of a thing about that, well, now, aren't you just onto something? I think it's a travesty that Microsoft was not blown up as a result of their loss of the antitrust suit in 2001, or maybe it was 1999. I think it was overturned in 2001. The parts of the judgment were overturned against Microsoft in their antitrust lawsuit. Well, we're on the last disk, so that's something. Be interesting to see. It's probably going to ask for like disk 5 or something here in a second. It's amazing how much easier things are when your floppy drive actually works. Who'da thunk it? That drive that's in there right now is a relatively new drive. I don't know. The quality control on them, oh, sorry, the drive that was installed in the machine, not the one I'm using, but the quality control on the newer drives is just kind of lackluster, to say the least. Now is about when the power will go out. This is not hooked into a UPS. Or the power supply will fail, or something else will break. Preparing to restart your computer. Okay. So let's see what it does now. Remove any disks from the drive and click Finish to restart and Finish Setup. So we'll pull the disk out, press the Finish button, and then the computer will reboot. I believe there is still some stuff left to do in setup. You're now running from the hard drive, getting ready to run Windows 95 for the first time. This is an exciting screen. That background is so great too. You know, I always wanted a keyboard just like the one that was in that picture. It was so incredibly weird. But you want to know something? Now that I own a keyboard, just like the one in that picture, I don't really want it anymore. It's just kind of a piece of junk. It's not helped by the fact that the vast majority of the ones that I've ever seen don't even work. This is not a fast process, I'll tell you what. It always concerns me when it just stops like that. This makes you wonder, is it going to go any further? Or did it just break? The suspense is killing me. Oh, here it comes. The dithering on that desktop background is awesome too, I think. Alright, DHCP client was unable to attain a network address. Yes, that's normal. It's not actually plugged into my network. Maybe I should have plugged it into my network. Do you want to see future? Yeah, sure, why not? Use a name to identify yourself. Who needs a password anyway? Windows 95's got the best security in the world anyway, to start with, so don't even need a password. It's bulletproof. I'm gonna just hit no on that. Alright, this is the last real part of setup right here. Setting up all the stuff. All the start menu shortcuts, which in the olden days used to be called program groups. Set up the help file. DOS program setup shouldn't be any of those. Time zone. No, that's not correct. We're in Eastern time. Is the date and time right? Well, it's not 2014 anymore, I can assure you of that. We'll set it. Why not? Oh, well, guess we won't be setting it because it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. Oh well. Microsoft Exchange. Configuring Microsoft Exchange. I don't want to configure Microsoft Exchange. I don't need that. Welcome to the Inbox Setup Wizard. Nope. I will configure it later. Or, more like never. Set up a printer. Well, don't have one of those either, so turn that off. Setup has finished configuring your system. You must restart. Click OK to restart now. Oh, that splash screen. So we're up probably about roughly 40 minutes in terms of time this took to install. Not including all of the nonsense that I went through trying to get a floppy drive to work on the machine. I love that splash. There's something about the blunkiness of the loading bar. It's just something else. It's just right, man. Well, we're in high color mode, so that's nice. Finalizing settings. Still not done. There we go. Welcome to Windows 95. Did you know to open a program you just click the Start button and then click the program's icon? Yeah, the Start button. Start me up. Rolling Stones song that they paid $3 million to license for the Windows 95 promotional materials. But yeah, all of this that we take for granted in this day and age that Microsoft has been busily trying to ruin in the newer versions of Windows, all of this was new. Well, what's new? If you've used Windows before, how do you start your programs? What happened to your program groups? What about the file manager? So, all that stuff existed. You saw in the setup earlier that you could still run the program manager on this if you really wanted to. Online registration. What's that going to do? Whoops. No modem is available on the system. If you do not install a modem, you will not be able to run this application. No, I don't want to run a modem. Huh. It requires a modem. Interesting. You can't use Ethernet to do it. Well, like I said earlier, it's a different time. I should be able to get better desktop on this. I can only do true color at 640 by 480. Well, let's try 16-bit color. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, you gotta restart. But it's gonna do a quick restart. The quick restart would be sort of like exiting Windows and then re-entering it. So exiting DOS and then restarting it from DOS. It's not a great video chipset if it can only do high color at 640 by 480, right? So how much video memory would that actually be? The native resolution of this panel is 1600 by 1200. The video chipset can't even do that. If you don't know how to do something, you can look it up in help. I don't need the welcome screen. Yeah. We'll leave it alone. I think 800 by 600 is okay. It's got the device manager. Free coffee feeling free, and yep, it has the SCSI controller as well. Which is not actually what it is, it's a 1740, but you know, never let the facts get in the way of the story. But yeah, it is sometimes very nice to go back and just see what everything used to be. Different time. Alright, I think that's probably enough reminiscing, at least for a little while. So we'll go ahead and we'll just set something, and I'm going to go ahead and shut this down, and then we are going to move on. And we are going to see just how much less time it takes to install from a CD. So we'll go ahead and we will shut down this computer. And it is now safe to turn off. Off it goes. Alright. So, we're now at step 2 of this. And in fact, this is the second time I'm doing this, because the first time it failed miserably because the computer that I am going to use for this, just bring that down here, you can see it, fought me every step of the way the last time I tried. Alright, setup is going to perform a routine check, sure. Found a compressed volume, doesn't exist. So we're just going to keep going. HPFS. Really? Oh, okay. Well, if that's the game you want to play, then that's the game you're going to lose. An error has occurred in your application. I don't care. Ignore it. Ignore it. Ignore it. Ignore it. And it crashed. Alright, we're done. Like I said in the video that I made, trying to put 3.1 on that, sometimes you just gotta know when to hold it and when to fold it. It's time to fold it. It's 1:30. I'm done screwing around. So my Windows 95 retrospective turned into Rage Against the Machine, I guess. So it's had a little bit of time to sit around and think about what it's done. Sitting out in the cold. I've brought it in, and we're going to try this again. This time I'm stacking the deck in my favor because we are not using the original Windows 95. What I wanted to do was I wanted to do an upgrade from Windows 3.1 or 3.11 to Windows 95. I could not get this thing to run Windows 3.11 to save its life. Okay. And, I mean, you'll see that video eventually. So I went to the OEM version of Windows 95, and that wouldn't install either. I ran into a problem with that. So now we're trying OSR2, which is a later release, again, OEM service release, basically a service pack, that bundles a couple of things. It's different enough, but it matches the boot disk that I'm trying to use, so we should be okay in this regard. We'll power it on. Let it test all 256 megabytes of its RAM. It'll tell me that there's a checksum error, so I'm going to have to set all the settings. Okay, save and exit. Let's give this another shot. Alright, it should slowly, extremely slowly boot the floppy. Hopefully it'll be faster than the other machine, which I believe was in non-turbo mode the entire time. Alright. NEC IDE CD-ROM support should be sufficient for this optical drive. Number of drives 1. Alright, we're good. So, now, what are we doing now? Well, we're loading, so it's drive D. Let's run fdisk. Normally what you would do is you would fdisk, and you would create, in fact, I do want to enable large disk support. You would create your disk. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do just that. We're going to delete this. Escape. We're going to create. We'll let it verify the drive integrity, which it will do several times for basically no reason at all. I want to use the maximum amount of space. It'll verify the integrity again. Again, for no reason at all. It's already done this. It is reading the hard drive, though, so there is one thing. Alright. So now we'll exit. We'll restart. And run through that process again. Alright. So we're going to format that hard drive now. And that could take a significant period of time. So because the camera is running low on battery, I'm not going to go through that process. Yes, I probably should, because I think I did with the other one. You know what? Why not? Let's just let it run. Let it run. And show you just how long this format process takes on this disk. I'm hopeful that FAT32 will handle 6 gigs just fine. I believe that it does. In fact, I think that's kind of what the point of FAT32 was. The original file allocation table, where FAT did not. You were limited to 2 gigabytes, I believe. Maybe even less than that. And that could be where some of my problems with the past installation came into play. Really, I would like a drive that's like 750 or 800 megabytes for this, but I don't have that sitting around, so I've got to deal with this. Even like a 1.5. I have a SCSI 1.5 gig drive I could have used, but this will be fine. Wow, 72%. It's not doing too bad, I'll be honest with you. If I were trying to do this with an older system, this would take forever. But yeah, 6.4 gigs is probably a bit too much for what I want to do with this. I would probably like to have a smaller drive. Of course, where am I going to find that? I don't know. A lot of my drives are larger, 6.4 or larger. So I don't have a whole lot of small drives anymore because they all went into computers. I have 5 minutes remaining on the camcorder as of right now. Probably plus a little bit of a following wind. Now I believe we are done. Calculating free space. Why would you do that? I'm going to just keep the same volume label. And now, there's nothing on it. What most people will do is they'll make a folder on the hard drive and they will copy the contents of the disk, the install CD, to the hard drive. That's probably a good move. I'm not going to do it. We are just going to run setup straight from the CD-ROM. We'll see what it does. It's reading. Something's happening. At least it was reading. Oh, here we go. Please wait while setup initializes. Alright, perform a routine check. Why not? So now it's checking the hard drive. Scan disk. I think you have to do this. If I remember right, if you hit X to quit out of this, it will cancel the Windows 95 setup. And obviously that's not beneficial, so we're going to let it go all the way through this. Not a fast process on a 6.4 gigabyte partition. But this would have been your experience back in the day, although a system like this is a K62-400 with a 6.4 gig hard drive and 256 megabytes of memory. Something like this is probably a little bit new for Windows 95. Like this probably would be more at home with Windows 98. But I'll let you in on a little secret. I think Windows 98 is a massive steaming pile of crap. So we're going to go with this. This doesn't have any USB hardware, which is really the only benefit that Windows 98 would ever have on anything. And, well, yeah, USB hardware would be really the only thing. Maybe some of the gaming aspects, but I'm not going to do gaming on this. So what do I care? Please do not do a surface scan. Okay, here we go. What's it going to do next? It's reading off the CD. It was reading off the CD. It has now stopped, and it started again. Setup is going to initialize again. Copying files needed for Windows setup. It just wrote to the floppy drive. I hope not. It's not going to the floppy. That'd be nice. Maybe I should unplug the floppy. Or eject the floppy, I should say. So far, this is a lot slower than the OEM copy that I was using, but here we go. Congratulations on your choice of Windows 95, the newest and easiest way to do what you want to do with your PC. It will take 30 to 60 minutes. Alright, we're going to click continue. And it's going to do more preparation work. The CD-ROM drive, this is a 24-speed CD-ROM drive, but I don't know. Maybe it's a piece of junk. I might have to stop the camera and change the battery. before I even get to the rest of this setup. It might be a good idea. But I have 3 minutes. I'd like to use all those 3 minutes before I bother. But here we go. I complained about it, and maybe now it's going to start moving. It's still a lot slower than the other setup was, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's got to load a lot more in. It does come with Internet Explorer, so that would explain a lot. One of the most bloated browsers in the history of ever. Although, to be fair to Internet Explorer, it really wasn't too bad until IE4 came out. Its stupid desktop update crap that it came with. We won't talk about that. This isn't an IE4 retrospective. This is a Windows 95 retrospective. In 95, I think OSR 2.5, the last version, 95C, did ship with IE4, but this is IE3 still. And when you think of IE4, normally you think of Windows 98. So, alright, collecting information about your computer. Install to see Windows, checking for installed components, which it won't find. We're going to do a custom install, and just like before, we're going to install everything, but I do need to get the product key. Okay, entered product key, also put a new battery on the camera. So, hopefully, get through this. Yes, this is a wonderful Model M. Analyzing your computer. Well, we'll do things automatically. Which, again, we're reading from the floppy. I don't have any of those things on this computer, so it's really a bare bones. Again, not something you would really expect from Windows 95. You'd expect it at least would have sound, because multimedia was a big deal back in that day, and with OSR 2 certainly, but this machine doesn't have it, and my experiences, at least initially with Windows 95, were with systems that didn't have any of that stuff. But I think the fanciest thing that my original Windows 95 computer had was a 14.4 PCMCIA modem. Yeah, because it was a laptop. I think I mentioned earlier that Dell Latitude XPI system, which initially I thought was a P133ST, because that's the model number that I always remembered. But it was not. It was an older machine. The P133ST does have sound hardware, and it's also got a different video chipset. Do not press Ctrl-Alt-Delete, it says. Why does they say that? It just so sorely tempts me. And that's not a bad process, of course, because it can't, there's no hardware for it to find, unlike the last one, which had network hardware and a SCSI card. It's really not much of a surprise. Okay, so we're going to install all of the things on this, because we can. There's more than enough disk space. Faxing? Why not? Yes, install all of it. Including all of the things that will no longer work, like the Microsoft Network. No. Okay, I guess I'm going to do that manually. I want to install that. Seems like there's fewer options in here than the other one, but that's alright. 155 megabytes is what that's going to take. Alright, so I don't really care. I don't have any networking on here anyway, and I don't really have any plans on installing any networking on here. ATI VGA Wonder. Well, that's not really what that is, but I'm going to leave it alone. I don't want to start up disk. And here comes the copy process. This is where this blew up the last time, which is probably where it's going to blow up here. But maybe not. It's actually working, and wow, it's actually going pretty quick. At least to start with. Click the Start button to quickly open programs. It's amazing all the stuff that we take for granted now that's just in Windows 95. First time. They had to explain all of this stuff back then because it was all brand new, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes I've wondered how connected to reality the progress bars really are on things. Because sometimes it's definitely kind of amazing just how far off they happen to be. For the power-conscious individuals, this machine is using about 50 watts. Not bad for an old computer, I guess. A power-hungry old computer is what they say. I'm sure this video is going to be up well over an hour. If it uploads. I hope it'll upload. I've never really had a problem with that kind of thing, but you never know sometimes. Just for the sake of mentioning it in this video, today is the 15th of November, and we are supposed to get an ice storm today. I had stuff I wanted to do, but the ice storm is supposed to start at 3, so it's looking an awful lot like that's not really going to be an option for me. So I was kind of hoping that this would have been done. But I had other projects I was working on, and they turned into an epic disaster. You're not even going to see a video of that, because there's really no point in making a video of that. So I'll mention it here. I tried changing a case on a server, and it just went poorly. Because I had an idea to use a front panel 5¼ inch adapter, and as it turns out the adapter doesn't even work, so that's terrifically useful, right? Like I said in the last one, I'd like to have a set of speakers that looks like that. I'm sure someone could 3D print something in this day and age. Could probably even 3D print a computer that looks like that. Maybe not the monitor. The monitor might be difficult, but again, I'm sure someone could do it. With the right material and time. I think this is the same subset of stuff that's going by in this right here that was on Windows 95 original gold release from floppy. It's definitely kind of amusing because I think even the picture was the same. Amusing that for a floppy copy of Windows, it still showed a CD-ROM drive in the picture. Just things that I noticed along the way and didn't bother saying anything about, but now I'm saying something about it when it doesn't actually matter. Should have took the time down when I started this. Uh-oh. Okay. Well, let's see if Windows breaks now that that happened, because that wasn't supposed to happen. Should have checked to see what file it was. I remember hearing something about that. Maybe I should have grabbed a different copy. I think I've got a CD of OSR2 sitting around somewhere. Maybe I should have just grabbed that. Again, this is all preparation work that normal people do for videos, but I don't. I like just going blind into something. It's almost like you go to... It's like it's 1995 again. You've gone to the store and just picked up your copy. You brought it home and it happened to have a damaged disc. That kind of stuff did happen. It wasn't very common. At least I don't think it was very common. Maybe it was and you just didn't hear about it. But, not with Windows anyway. I think the pressings were usually pretty good for those, but... You know, it could still happen. It's just like LCD panels back in the day. There's a reason why they were so expensive, and why warranties, particularly for active matrix displays, unless your display was basically unusable, stuck pixels were not a reason for a warranty claim. Your display panel had to be peppered with them before they would actually even honor it, because it was expensive and difficult to make an active matrix display. Communicate with anyone. Yeah, I think you communicate with everyone by just installing AOL. None of this Microsoft crap. But, I mean, it was all new back then, and certainly fun. Microsoft flaunting their monopoly in the operating system market that they had at the time to crush the competition. They got sued and lost over that, by the way. I think it's very unfortunate that... I don't even know who it was. Was it the Supreme Court? Or was it the state Supreme Court? I don't remember exactly where it went, but they overturned most of it. If they didn't, Microsoft would not exist today as it is. It'd be a different existence. But there's a lot of different parallel paths that the PC could have taken. You know, just imagine if instead of DOS on the IBM PC, they used CP/M. Again, a different world. There's an alternative timeline where the Macintosh no longer exists. There's an alternative timeline probably where Apple turned into a software company. And just like Microsoft supplied their operating system and all that's on the market for the Macintosh are the various clones. Sort of makes you think. There's also a world where things like Windows 95 couldn't have existed because they were too similar to the Macintosh. If Apple had won their lawsuit against Microsoft when Windows 2.0 came out, imagine that for a minute. The only company that would be allowed to use a graphical user interface was Apple. I'm sure it would have been licensed for a heavy fee, but, you know, maybe not. We could all still be using DOS right now. You never know. Or computers could have just faded away into nothing. Sometimes I think that would be a better timeline to live in, but we're here now. 82% of the way through a Windows 95 setup. At least the initial part of setup. It's still got to do some other things in it. You know, configure drivers and whatever. Last minute stuff that it needs to do. It's hard to believe 30 years ago Windows 95 came out. It's about my age. I'm not quite 30 yet. But I'm getting closer. Closer and closer. That'll be next year's problem. Not feeling too hot about that. But, well, you know, I don't really care, honestly. As long as I keep having birthdays, I'm happy. But, at least for now. I guess I should preface that by saying as long as I keep having birthdays and have enough of my faculties intact to enjoy them. You know, because it's one thing to keep living, it's another entirely to be living tethered to a hospital bed in the vegetative state. It's funny the kind of things that you think of and say into a microphone on a Windows 95 installation video, but this isn't a fast process. You know, people forget just how spoiled we really are with things like SSDs and multi-gigabytes of RAM and USB 3.0. Again, it's a different time. And emulators, or virtualization, maybe not so much emulators, but certainly virtualization. You know, you fire up a VM and put this on there and it takes probably a tenth of the time that this would. And people forget just how long it used to take to do anything. This could just be a complete waste of time because we had that error message earlier about a cab file not being copyable. So, ought to be interesting to see what happens. Oh, I just heard a noise that I didn't like come from the optical drive. But it's still going. I am going to put a link in the video description to a video of this computer because believe it or not, I've already made a video of this computer. I forgot that I did because I saw it sitting out in storage and was like, what the heck is this? I had no idea that I still had this thing, but that's probably a sad indictment to the state of my computer collection. It's grown to the size that I don't even know what I have anymore. I wanted to use the digital PC 5000 for this, but a system like that, I'm not sure it makes sense to install Windows 95 because that has USB hardware on it. So, I mean, I could put OSR 2.5, but I don't want to deal with Internet Explorer 4 and its active desktop update because I think that that's just not useful to anybody. So I don't know if that's going to get 95 or not. It probably will anyway. Maybe I'll just install it for the sake of installing it. Why not? Well, first part of setup is almost done. As I said earlier, this computer has fought me every step of the way. When it comes down to installing this, you get one thing done and then you run into another problem. You get past that and you run into another problem. Nothing but problems. Hopefully this works. It is almost 3 o'clock. Wow, it's 2:48 right now. Like I said, I was hoping to get this done and get out and get the rest of my stuff done before 3, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. It's still reading the optical drive, so we are still working. In theory, unless it ran into another bad spot on the desk. That error message was interesting. It said, you interrupted a file copy. But I didn't touch anything. So I don't know what that was all about. Click the Windows Tour on or What's New button. Notice how it says CD only. I think OSR2 did come on floppies. You could order that as an OEM if you wanted to. Well, like I said earlier, I can't imagine that Windows 95 was popular on floppy by the time OSR2 came out. But the corollary to that is that the original Windows 95 didn't have a CD-ROM version. The retail full copy did not have a CD-ROM because back at that point people didn't have CD-ROMs. Well, they did, but it wasn't as widespread, so maybe my timelines are a little bit off for CD-ROM support. OSR2 being a little bit later. I don't know, I keep saying all these different contradictory things throughout this video. Someone who did planning wouldn't do that. We are now preparing to restart the computer. Remove disks from the drive and click Finish. So we'll eject the boot disk. Click on Finish. Setup is now trying to restart. If your computer does not respond for a long time, turn it off and back on. Not ready reading drive A. Well, watch this. Here's a reset switch. We're not playing that game. So this is the part where it fails, right? Probably. Oh, starting Windows 95. It's not a total fail yet. That's a loud hard drive. Getting ready to run for the first time. I love this screen. I almost wish that there probably is, if I go to actually look it up. Windows protection error. This is a 400 megahertz computer. What are you talking about? Maybe I'll just call a video because I think this is crazy. Wow. I don't even know what to say. That's just nuts. Alright, forget it. This is dumb. Okay, I went to go and run safe mode, and I get an error about how there's not enough extended memory to run Windows. And it just shuts off. So, you know what? I think we're finished here. I need to get this video edited. I need to get it uploaded. So, there you go with your experiences with Windows 95. At least it worked on one machine. I was able to get it to work on that. This, I think, is a little too new for Windows 95. I just think that this machine's a little too new. I'll probably have to find something else that's a little bit older. I don't know, you know, the irony is that the machine that I had 3.1 on, that VLB machine down there, that probably would be new enough for Windows 95. It has to be a 386 or newer. But I thought that was going to work. I don't know, I have another candidate here for 95. If you remember back to this machine, it has a CD-ROM in it. Maybe that'd work a little bit better, but I don't know what state the system's in, so I'm not really at liberty right now to do that. So there might be a future follow-up video. In fact, there probably will be a future follow-up video on Windows 95. But suffice it to say, it was a different time, folks. And my experiences that I experienced in this video just go to show you just what you can run into, especially now with Windows 95 and how it does and doesn't work. But for as glitchy and as weird as it is, especially when you're trying to install it on systems that are maybe a little bit too new for it, for its time, it was a revolution. You know, the start menu was it was a revolution. It changed the entire way everybody interacted with their computers, and it almost killed Apple. Well, Apple had their own problems, but Windows getting way better and basically eating their lunch is one of the reasons why Apple ended up the way that it ended up. But it all worked out in the end for everybody involved, I think. So even if it didn't work out for me on this video, you've got all my thoughts on Windows 95. You've got everything that you need to know. Stay tuned for 3 years from now when there'll be a Windows 98 retrospective. I hate Windows 98. I think it sucks, but especially when you compare it to Windows 95. But it's got its merits. It is what it is. So there you go with your Windows 95 experience video. If you made it this far, I'd like to congratulate you. And if you have any comments, definitely feel free to leave them below.